Love, it's not what you think. I don't know this man. I've been set up. My words crash against the wall of his anger. The eyes that once looked at me with warmth now burn with cold suspicion. I reach out, desperately trying to grasp even the edge of his sleeve, but he pulls away as if my touch is poison. Enough. His voice is low, controlled, but I can hear the crack beneath it, like a dam about to burst. His jaw is clenched so tightly that I wonder if he'll break his own teeth. I saw you. I saw you with him. You didn't see anything. You saw what they wanted you to see. My voice wavers, but I fight to keep it steady. My heart pounds so loudly in my chest that I can barely hear my own words. Then, like a knife sliding into my ribs, a new voice cuts through the air. Of course she'd deny it, brother. What else could she say? I whirl around to see her standing there, his sister. Her arms are crossed, a satisfied smirk playing on her lips, but her eyes glisten with artificial sympathy. Fake. Everything about her is fake. You should have listened to me from the start, she sighs, stepping closer to him. I tried to warn you, but you wouldn't hear it. And now, here we are. That's not true, I choke out. My hands tremble, rage and helplessness swirling in my chest like a storm. Why are you doing this? What have I ever done to you? Me? She gasps, placing a hand on her chest in mock surprise. You're the one sneaking around behind my brother's back, and I'm the bad guy? She turns to him, shaking her head. I don't know why you're still letting her talk. She's just trying to manipulate you. I stare at her, my throat tightening until I can barely breathe. This is a nightmare. A cruel, twisted nightmare. I didn't do anything, I whisper, barely able to get the words out. I love you. His expression flickers, just for a second. I see something in his eyes, hesitation, doubt, something I can grab onto. But then his sister speaks again, and whatever I saw in him vanishes. You really believe her over me? Her voice is softer now, wounded. She knows exactly what she's doing. After everything? After all the times I've protected you? After all the times she's lied? His shoulders stiffen. He looks at me again, but this time, it's different. There's nothing left in his gaze. No love, no trust, just cold, empty finality. Get out! The words hit me like a slap. My breath catches in my throat. What? Get out! His voice is firmer now, each syllable like a hammer driving in a nail. I don't want to see you again. No, please don't do this. You know me. You know me. I reach for him again, but this time he doesn't just pull away. He shoves my hand aside, and then, like my world has shattered in an instant, he turns his back on me. I don't remember how I make it to the door. My body moves on its own, numb, detached. My hands feel ice cold as I grip the handle, but I don't want to open it. I don't want to step out. If I do, this is real. If I do, it's over. I loved you, I whisper, one last plea, one last chance. He doesn't even turn around. I step out. The door slams shut behind me. The cold night air slaps me in the face as I stagger down the steps. I don't know where I'm going. My vision is blurred. Whether from the wind or my tears, I can't tell anymore. I replay the moment over and over in my head, searching for something, anything that I could have said to change it. But all I hear are his words. Cold. Unforgiving. Get out. The man who was supposed to be my forever, my safe place, just cast me aside like I meant nothing. And all because of her. I bite down on my lip until I taste blood. My hands curl into fists, nails digging into my palms. Why? Why would she do this? Was it jealousy, hate, or just for her own amusement? A sharp gust of wind rushes past me, and I shiver, wrapping my arms around myself. I feel exposed, raw, as if the whole world is staring at my humiliation. I can still hear their voices behind me, muffled through the door, but I know she's in there, smiling. I know she's already weaving her next lie, making sure he never questions her, never doubts her version of events. She's won. The thought burns like acid in my chest. I glance back at the house one last time. The windows glow warmly against the dark night, but that house isn't my home anymore. It never will be again. A sob escapes my lips before I can stop it. I press a hand to my mouth, as if I can force the pain back down, but it spills out of me in broken gasps. I trusted him. I loved him. And now, I have nothing. Tears stream down my cheeks as I take a shaky step forward. Then another. Then another. I don't know where I'm going. I just know I can't stop walking. I used to believe that love, true love, the kind that sets your soul on fire, was something I would never experience. I had everything, or so it seemed. Born into wealth, surrounded by luxury, I had access to the finest things in life. Designer dresses, private jets, grand ballrooms filled with people who spoke in polished tones and measured words. Every event was a calculated performance, every relationship an intricate dance of social status and appearances. I had mastered the art of smiling at the right people, entertaining the right conversations, and never showing a moment of real vulnerability. But inside, I felt nothing. The grandeur, the excess, the unspoken rules of our world, none of it excited me. I had grown up in a golden cage where everything was beautiful but utterly predictable. My life was mapped out before me. The right schools, the right connections, the right future. Until him. He was different. Not in the way that others whispered about rebellion or scandal, but in the way he carried himself, effortlessly charming yet deeply thoughtful. He belonged to this world, just like me, but unlike the others, he seemed to see through its illusions. The first time we met, it was at a charity gala. Another night of empty conversations and polite laughter. I was standing by the grand piano, swirling a glass of champagne, pretending to listen to yet another discussion about investments and inheritance. Then, suddenly, a voice beside me. "Bored?" I turned, startled, and found him watching me with an amused smile. There was something in his eyes, intelligence, curiosity, maybe even the slightest hint of mischief. "I wasn't supposed to say that out loud, was I?" he added, smirking. I laughed. A real, genuine laugh, not the rehearsed one I usually used at these events. "You just said what everyone here is thinking," I replied. And just like that, something shifted. We spent the rest of the evening together, talking in hushed voices away from the crowd. For the first time in forever, I didn't feel like I was acting. I told him things I had never told anyone, how exhausting it was to be surrounded by so much wealth and yet feel so empty, how I longed for something real, something that wasn't carefully curated for social prestige. He understood. Unlike the others, he didn't just accept the life we were born into, he questioned it. He had spent his years studying, traveling, seeking meaning beyond the endless cycle of galas and inheritance meetings. He had dreams, passions, a vision for something greater. And slowly, I found myself drawn to him like gravity. The weeks that followed were the happiest I had ever known. He would take me to places I had never seen before, not the extravagant resorts or exclusive clubs, but hidden corners of the city, quiet bookstores, late-night cafes where we could talk for hours. We'd discuss philosophy, history, art. He challenged my thoughts, made me laugh, made me think. We built our own world, one where we were more than just the heirs to wealthy families. One night, under a sky full of stars, he kissed me for the first time. "You make me feel alive," I whispered against his lips. "You are alive," he murmured back. From that moment, there was no turning back. The engagement came in the most spectacular way imaginable. It was in Paris, in a private suite overlooking the Seine. The room was filled with candlelight, a soft melody playing in the background. I remember feeling the warmth of his hand as he led me to the balcony, the city lights twinkling beneath us. "I always knew my life would be extraordinary," he said, his voice steady yet full of emotion. "But I never thought it would be because of someone else." I gasped as he knelt before me, the ring box in his hand. The diamond sparkled, but it wasn't the ring that took my breath away. It was the way he looked at me, as if I was the most precious thing in the world. "Will you marry me?" Tears welled in my eyes, not from doubt, not from hesitation, but from sheer happiness. "Yes," I breathed. He slipped the ring onto my finger, and in that moment I knew I had found something real. I had found him. We were inseparable after that. The world around us remained the same, lavish, demanding, full of expectations. But with him, everything felt different. The loneliness I had carried for so long vanished. We planned our future together, envisioning a life that was more than just wealth and obligations. We spoke of traveling the world, of creating something meaningful. He promised me that our love would be different from the shallow marriages we had seen growing up. No lies, no masks, he had said, holding my hand tightly. Only us. Always. And I had believed him. Oh, how foolish I had been. I should have known. From the very beginning, she never accepted me. His sister, cold, calculating, always watching. She was polite in public, of course. She played the role of the perfect socialite, the supportive sibling, always smiling in the right moments, always saying the right things. But underneath it, I could feel it. That quiet, simmering hostility. A careful distance she placed between us, as if I were an unwelcome guest in a house that was supposed to be my home. At first, I tried to ignore it. She just needs time, he told me once when I brought it up. She's protective, that's all. She's always been that way with me. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to think that maybe I was imagining things, that maybe she wasn't deliberately trying to push me away. But the signs were there, too many to ignore. It started small, little things, subtle and insidious, like a game only she knew she was playing. At family dinners, she would make passive comments, slipping in just enough poison to make me feel uneasy. "Oh, you don't know how to ski? That's surprising. Most people in our circle do." "Your family didn't summer in Italy? I guess we just grew up differently." "You don't drink this brand of wine?" "Oh, well, I suppose we all have our preferences." She always said it with a soft smile, with an innocent tilt of her head, as if she didn't mean anything by it. But I saw the way her brother glanced at me when she spoke. He never said anything, but I could feel the weight of her words settling into his mind, planting seeds of doubt. Then, the accident started. One evening, I arrived late to a gala, an event his family had been hosting for years. I was supposed to meet him there, but at the last minute, my dress was nowhere to be found. The wardrobe in my suite had been mysteriously emptied, and when I called the staff in a panic, they swore they had no idea what had happened. I was forced to wear something last minute, something that clashed completely with the theme of the event. And of course, when I arrived, his sister was the first to greet me, a glass of champagne in her hand, her lips curled in amusement. "Oh dear," she said, her eyes trailing over my outfit. "You must have been in such a rush." His family noticed. His mother frowned. His father barely acknowledged me. And when I found him in the crowd, his expression was tight, controlled. "Why were you late?" he asked. "My dress, someone took it, It's always something, isn't it?" He sighed, rubbing his temple. "You're always caught in these situations." And just like that, it was my fault. I tried to brush it off. Maybe I really had misplaced my dress. Maybe I was just imagining things. But it happened again. And again. Important messages that never reached me. Plans that were changed at the last minute. Conversations that somehow never made it to my ears, making me seem careless, irresponsible. And every time something went wrong, she was there. "Oh, I thought you knew." "Didn't he tell you?" "You poor thing, you must feel so left out." I tried to talk to him about it. I tried to explain that these things weren't coincidences, that someone was deliberately trying to sabotage me, but he wouldn't hear it. "My sister wouldn't do that." His voice was firm, unwavering. "You're just stressed. Maybe you're overthinking." "I'm not overthinking," I snapped, frustration bubbling over. "Things keep happening, and she's always at the center of them. Can't you see it?" His expression hardened. "She's my sister." "And I'm supposed to be your fiancé." My voice cracked, and for the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Something that made my stomach twist. Doubt. Not in her. In me. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing myself to breathe. I exhaled shakily. "I just need you to trust me." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in the way his jaw clenched. "I do," he said, but the hesitation in his voice made my heart sink. "But you have to stop seeing her as the enemy." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him, to make him see. But what would that accomplish? He was blind to it, to her, to the way she was carefully unraveling us, thread by thread. So I let it go. For a while, I told myself it wasn't worth fighting over. I told myself that our love was stronger than this, that she could play her little games, but in the end, it wouldn't matter. I never thought she would go this far. I never imagined she would be capable of something so cruel, so calculated, that it would destroy everything we had built. But she did. And I never saw it coming. The anger still burned inside me like a wildfire, refusing to die down, even as I sped through the empty streets of the city. The betrayal clung to my skin like a thick layer of filth I couldn't scrub away, no matter how hard I tried to push it out of my mind. How could he? How could he believe her over me? I gritted my teeth, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I had replayed the moment in my head 1,000 times already. The accusations, the way he looked at me with disgust, as if I were a stranger, not the woman he once claimed to love, as if the promises we made, the dreams we shared, had meant nothing at all. My phone buzzed in the passenger seat, but I ignored it. I knew who it was, probably my parents, wondering why I had left the house in such a hurry. Maybe one of my friends, sensing that something was wrong. But I didn't want to talk. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted to forget. By the time I reached my apartment, I felt like I was vibrating with rage, my body too filled with adrenaline to sit still. I kicked off my heels the moment I walked inside, pacing back and forth across my living room, running a hand through my tangled hair. Screw him! Screw both of them! I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts, pressing the call button before I could change my mind. Babe? What's wrong? We're going out, I said, my voice sharp, decisive. Right now, I need to forget this night ever happened. There was a pause, then excitement. Oh, that bad? Say no more. I'll call the girls. Meet us at the club in 30. I hung up without another word. If he thought I was going to sit here and cry over him, he was dead wrong. The music was deafening. The bass throbbed beneath my feet, vibrating through the floor and into my bones. Neon lights flashed across the crowd, illuminating bodies that moved in a chaotic rhythm, lost in the music, in the moment. I threw back another shot, the alcohol burning down my throat, drowning out the bitter taste of betrayal. My friends cheered, their laughter mixing with the pulse of the club, but I barely heard them. My thoughts were spinning, swirling together with the colors and sounds around me. Forget him! One of my friends shouted over the music, pulling me onto the dance floor. I already have, I lied. I let the music consume me, let my body move without thinking, without caring. For the first time in forever, I wasn't the perfect daughter, the poised fiancée, the woman who always did what was expected of her. Tonight, I was just me. And then, I saw him. He sat at the bar, swirling a drink in his hand, watching me with an amused smirk. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair slightly tousled, as if he had run his hands through it a few too many times. His sharp jawline caught the glow of the neon lights, and his blue eyes, piercing, intense, didn't leave mine. Confidence radiated from him, effortless and undeniable. I should have looked away. I should have ignored the way his gaze made my skin tingle, the way he tilted his head slightly, inviting me without a word. But I didn't. Before I could second-guess myself, I walked straight to the bar and slid onto the stool beside him. You look like someone who just made a very bad decision, he said, smirking. I laughed, though the sound was sharp, almost bitter. I just got rid of a very bad decision. He raised an eyebrow. Ah, a breakup. Something like that. And now you're here, drinking your pain away? Not pain, I corrected. Disappointment. He nodded as if he understood perfectly, then lifted his glass. To disappointment, then. I clinked my drink against his, and then everything blurred. The shots, the laughter, the way his hand brushed against mine as he leaned in to whisper something that made me laugh even though I couldn't remember what it was. The way the club spun around me, the flashing lights turning into streaks of color. A dance. His hands on my waist, mine gripping his shoulders, his lips brushing against my ear as he murmured something I couldn't quite hear. And then, nothing. Pain. A pounding, relentless pain behind my eyes. I groaned, rolling onto my side, my body aching as if I had been hit by a truck. My mouth was dry, my limbs heavy, my head spinning like I was still trapped in last night's storm. What the hell happened? I forced my eyes open, but immediately regretted it. The sunlight streaming through my window was blinding, stabbing through my skull like 1,000 needles. I groaned again, squeezing my eyes shut. Think. Flashes of the night before flickered through my mind. The club, the drinks, him, tall, blue eyes, a smirk that made my stomach twist. I sat up too fast, and the world tilted violently. I gripped my forehead, my pulse hammering in my ears. Something felt off. I glanced around my bedroom, my dress from last night crumpled at the foot of the bed, my heels kicked to the side. My phone lay face down on the nightstand, the screen cracked. And then, I saw it. A name. A phone number. Scrawled across my wrist in bold black ink. Jacob. My stomach dropped. I rubbed at the writing, but it wouldn't smudge. It was real. I had no idea who he was. I had no idea what I had done. And worst of all, I had no idea what would happen next. I spent the entire morning in bed, curled up under the covers, hoping that if I stayed there long enough, the events of last night would somehow erase themselves from existence. But they didn't. My head was still pounding, my stomach twisted into knots, and every time I glanced at my wrist, the black ink of Jacob's name and number stared back at me like a mocking reminder. "Who the hell is Jacob?" I groaned, dragging myself out of bed. I needed answers. But more than that, I needed coffee. The kitchen was a disaster zone. My purse was half spilled across the counter, my lipstick smeared across the side of my phone case, and, oh God, was that a half-eaten slice of pizza on the floor? This was bad. I poured myself a cup of coffee, hoping it would magically return my memories, but all it did was intensify my nerves. I had been drunk before, tipsy even, but last night, I had completely lost myself, and that scared me. My phone buzzed beside me. I hesitated before picking it up. I had been avoiding my friends all morning, partly because I wasn't ready to hear what they had to say, and partly because I was terrified of what they might remember that I didn't. I took a deep breath and finally hit dial. It rang twice before a voice answered. "Well, well, well, look who's alive." I groaned. "Please, don't start." "Oh, I'm just getting warmed up." There was a burst of laughter in the background, definitely more than one person. "Are you all on speaker?" I asked, already regretting my decision. "Of course we are," another voice chimed in. "We've been dying to hear from you. Last night was iconic." I rubbed my temples. "I have no memory of what happened, at all, so please, start from the beginning and be gentle." There was a pause, then a collective giggle. "Oh, babe, you don't want us to be gentle." I braced myself. "Okay, just tell me, what did I do?" "You mean, besides becoming the life of the party? You were dancing on tables, singing your heart out, and absolutely destroying the dance floor. And then," one of them added, "you started flirting with this guy at the bar. And not just any guy, babe, a Greek god of a man, like movie star level hot." I blinked. "Wait, what?" "Yeah, you were all over him. You two disappeared at one point, and we thought we'd have to start planning your wedding." My heart nearly stopped. "Oh my God, please tell me I didn't—" Relax, nothing like that happened." I exhaled in relief. "But," another voice cut in, "we did remember something this morning. Turns out you knew the guy." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "At first, we thought he was some random stranger, but then we realized he's Jacob, the guy from that project you worked on ages ago." I froze. Memories started flickering at the edges of my mind, still blurry, still hazy. Jacob. I knew a Jacob. Tall, dark hair, those blue eyes. "Holy shit," I whispered. "Jacob?" "Yes. You worked with him years ago. He was always super nice to you, and you two got along great. But babe, last night? That was something else." I buried my face in my hands. Oh my God, what did I do? Well, he was actually being really sweet, one of them said. You were, not in the best state, and he was trying to help you get home. Right. He took me outside, didn't he? There was another pause. Then the laughter exploded. Oh my God. You don't remember, do you? What? What happened? Babe. Someone was crying from laughing so hard. You threw up all over his car. Silence. Total, absolute silence. And then, I what? More laughter. I could practically see them wiping away tears of amusement. Yeah, you were fine at first, but then you just, boom, all over his gorgeous, very expensive car. I wanted the earth to open up and swallow me whole. Please tell me you're lying. We wish, one of them giggled. His face was priceless. He was so nice about it, though. He even made sure you got home safely after we gave him your address. I groaned, collapsing onto the couch. This cannot be happening. Oh, it happened. And you have to call him. Are you insane? I can never show my face again. Babe, you owe him at least an apology. You defiled his car. I know, I groaned. But also, one of them said slyly, you did have insane chemistry, just saying. I ignored them, already mortified beyond belief. I need to go. You need to call him. I need to die. Oh, you'll be fine. Love you. The call ended, leaving me staring at my phone in horror. Jacob. I had thrown up on Jacob's car, and now I had his number. What the hell was I supposed to do with that? A week had passed, 7 days, but it felt like an eternity. Life had returned to its usual rhythm, or at least it should have. The world outside continued as if nothing had happened. People still hurried through the streets, coffee shops still overflowed with morning rush hour crowds, and life went on as if my heart hadn't been ripped apart, as if I hadn't been humiliated, betrayed, and discarded like I was nothing. I had tried to distract myself. I really had. I went to work, I went to yoga, I answered texts from my friends, but everything felt hollow. And the worst part? He never even called, not once. No apology, no explanation, nothing. I had spent nights lying awake, staring at my ceiling, replaying it all over and over again in my head, the way his face twisted in anger, the way he believed her without even hesitating, the way he looked at me, not with love, but with disgust. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him, make him see how blind he had been, how stupid. He doesn't deserve my tears, I told myself, but I still felt them burning behind my eyes. I had loved him. I had planned my future with him. And in one night, in one cruel, orchestrated moment, it was all gone. And for what? Because his sister said so? Because she snapped her fingers and made him dance like a puppet on a string? What kind of man lets his sister control his life like that? A fool. That's what. I tried to convince myself I was glad to be free of him, that I had dodged a bullet, that I was better off. And for the most part, I believed it. Until I remembered Jacob. The moment his name crossed my mind, my stomach twisted. I had been so wrapped up in my heartbreak, in my anger, that I had almost managed to forget the sheer, mind-melting humiliation of what had happened with him. Almost. But now, the memory slammed into me with full force. The club, the dancing, the flirting, the way I had thrown myself at him like some lovesick teenager. And then, the absolute horror of what happened next. I groaned, burying my face in my hands. I had vomited on his car. Not just any car, his car. And he had still driven me home. I wanted to die. No, scratch that. I wanted to build a time machine, go back to that night, and slap the drink out of my own hand before I could make a complete fool of myself. But the longer I thought about it, the more something nagged at me. Jacob hadn't left me there. He hadn't abandoned me or been cruel about it. He had helped me. Why? We had known each other before, but we hadn't been close. We had worked together, sure, and I had always thought he was kind, intelligent, and, well, gorgeous. But it wasn't like we had stayed in touch. So why had he gone out of his way for me? Why had he made sure I got home safely? And why, even after a week, could I still remember the way he looked at me under the neon lights? I exhaled sharply, pushing my thoughts aside. None of that mattered right now. What mattered was that I owed him an apology. No, more than that. I needed to apologize. I couldn't let this sit any longer. The thought of what I had done, of what he must have thought of me, made my skin crawl. I had to call him. I had to face this. But the very idea made my stomach tighten with dread. What if he ignored my call? What if he laughed in my face? What if he picked up and said, "Oh, you? The girl who destroyed my car? No thanks." Or worse, what if he was kind about it? What if he told me it was fine, no big deal, and that he didn't even think about it anymore? What if I had been obsessing over this humiliation while he had already moved on? I swallowed hard, staring at my phone where his number was still scribbled in ink on an old piece of paper. Jacob. I inhaled, exhaled, and then, before I could talk myself out of it, I reached for my phone, but my fingers hovered over the screen. I couldn't do it. Not yet. Instead, I threw my phone onto the bed and flopped down beside it, staring at the ceiling, replaying every single moment leading up to this. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the humiliation. What was I even doing? A week ago, my entire life had revolved around someone else, around a relationship that I thought was my future. And now? Now I was avoiding a phone call because I was too embarrassed to face the consequences of my own actions. I groaned again, rolling over onto my side. No, I couldn't leave it like this. It wasn't about him. It wasn't about me either. It was about doing the right thing. Jacob had done nothing wrong. If anything, he had been the only person in my life who had actually been there when I was at my absolute worst. And for that, he deserved an apology. I closed my eyes and took another deep breath. Tomorrow, I would call him. I stared at my phone for what felt like an eternity. My fingers hovered over the screen, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. Just call him. It's just a phone call. You've had harder conversations. But somehow this felt different. I inhaled deeply, exhaled slowly, and before I could talk myself out of it again, I pressed call. The phone rang once, twice, and then, well, if it isn't my favorite passenger. I nearly choked on my own breath. Oh my God, I groaned, covering my face with my free hand. You knew it was me? Of course. His voice was rich with amusement. I was wondering when you'd call. My words stuck in my throat. I had prepared a speech, something apologetic but dignified, but now my brain felt like static. Let me guess, he continued smoothly. You're calling about the unfortunate incident with my car? I squeezed my eyes shut. Kill me now. God, I'm so sorry. I was a mess that night. I never drink that much, I swear, and— Relax, he interrupted, his voice light. You don't owe me a grand apology. I'm just glad you made it home safe. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. I had braced for teasing, maybe even a little smugness, but instead, he sounded genuine. Still, I forced out, I feel terrible about what happened. I was wondering if I could make it up to you. Oh? His tone shifted slightly, as if he was intrigued. Dinner, I blurted out. My treat, as an apology. A pause. You want to buy me dinner because you threw up on my car? I winced. When you say it like that, I accept. Wait, what? I accept your apology dinner. There's a place I've been meaning to check out. High-end, great food. I think it'll be perfect. Oh. I hesitated. Sure, yeah, just text me the details. Consider it done. Okay. Well, I'll see you tomorrow then. Looking forward to it, sweetheart. He hung up before I could react. Sweetheart. I dropped my phone onto the couch and buried my face in my hands. What had I just agreed to? The next evening, I arrived at the restaurant feeling like I had made the worst mistake of my life. I had spent way too much time getting ready, torn between looking effortlessly chic and not wanting to look like I had put in effort for him. In the end, I settled on something elegant yet simple. A black dress, minimal jewelry, my hair pulled back just enough to frame my face. But when I stepped inside the restaurant and spotted him, all my confidence wavered. He was stunning. Tall, effortlessly handsome, his dark hair neatly styled but still tousled just enough to give him that dangerously charming look. His suit was tailored to perfection, crisp and dark against his tanned skin. And then there were his eyes, sharp, observant, amused as they met mine. "You clean up nice," he said smoothly, standing as I approached the table. I swallowed. "So do you." He pulled out my chair for me, and I sat down, trying not to let my nerves show. The restaurant was dimly lit, elegant without being pretentious. The kind of place that whispered luxury rather than screamed it. A waiter arrived with menus, and for a moment there was nothing but the soft murmur of other diners, the faint clinking of glasses. "So," Jacob finally said, setting his menu aside, "are you going to be able to eat tonight, or should I keep a bucket nearby just in case?" I groaned, hiding my face behind my hands. "I will never live that down, will I?" He chuckled. "Probably not, but I have to say it was memorable." "Mortifying, you mean?" "Both," he admitted, smirking. Despite myself, I laughed. The tension in my shoulders loosened slightly. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. We ordered, and to my surprise, the conversation flowed easily. Jacob was easy to talk to, witty, intelligent, confident without arrogance. He didn't make me feel awkward or embarrassed, and for the first time in a week, I felt like I could actually breathe. And then, just as I was starting to relax, he reached into his pocket and placed something on the table between us. A ring. My ring. My breath caught in my throat. "You left this in my car that night," he said, his voice softer now. "I figured you'd want it back." I stared at the engagement ring, my heart pounding. The sight of it, the delicate band, the sparkling stone, sent a wave of emotions crashing over me. I reached out slowly, my fingers brushing against the cool metal. "I didn't even realize—" My voice trailed off. "You were a little preoccupied." He leaned back, studying me. "You told me everything, you know." I stiffened. "Everything?" "Your fiancé. The betrayal, the way his sister set you up." I swallowed hard. "I barely knew you," he continued, his gaze unreadable. "And yet, that night, you trusted me with all of it." I didn't know what to say. He exhaled, rubbing his thumb over the rim of his glass. It pissed me off, honestly. I blinked. "What?" "The way he threw you away so easily. The way you were hurting over someone who didn't deserve you." My throat tightened. "I don't know why I told you all of that," I admitted. "I barely remember it." "Maybe because you knew I'd listen." Silence settled between us. Finally, I picked up the ring, turning it over in my palm. It felt different now, like a relic from a past life. "I don't even know what to do with it." "Pawn it," he said casually. "Buy yourself something better." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "Or," he added, smirking, "you could use it to buy me a new car." I groaned. "Jacob." "What? I think it's a fair trade." I rolled my eyes, slipping the ring into my purse. "I'll consider it." He smiled, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something shift inside me. Something lighter, something new. And just like that, my life took a turn I never saw coming. Weeks turned into months, and life slowly found its rhythm again. At first, I buried myself in work, determined to rebuild, to reclaim my sense of control. I went to meetings, tackled projects, filled my days with endless tasks to keep myself from thinking too much. My friends made sure I wasn't left alone with my thoughts for too long, pulling me into brunches, weekend getaways, and nights filled with laughter and distraction. And yet, despite everything, Jacob was always there, lingering in the back of my mind. What had started as a single, humiliating moment had somehow turned into something more. It was subtle at first. Occasional texts, sarcastic banter, casual check-ins that seemed harmless. But then, one day, everything changed. My phone buzzed with a call. "I have a proposition for you." "A proposition?" I repeated, intrigued. "A business one," he clarified, a hint of amusement in his voice. I need someone brilliant, strategic, and maybe a little ruthless. Someone I can trust, and I can't think of anyone better than you." I leaned back in my chair, considering his words carefully. The offer was tempting. "What's the project?" "It's big, bigger than anything I've done before. It has the potential to change the game, but I can't do it alone. I need someone who thinks like I do, someone who won't back down when things get tough." There was something in his voice, excitement, confidence, a certainty that made it impossible to refuse. I hesitated, knowing full well that working with Jacob meant seeing him constantly, being drawn further into his orbit. "All right," I finally said, "let's do this." And just like that, we became partners. The project was intense, high stakes, high risk, and high reward. We spent long days in conference rooms, strategizing, pitching ideas, arguing over details that seemed insignificant to anyone but us. And the nights? They were even longer. Late hours in the office, coffee-fueled debates, and moments of exhaustion that turned into bursts of creativity. We pushed each other, challenged each other, and somewhere in the chaos, we became something more than just business partners. There were moments, quiet ones, that caught me off guard. The way he always remembered exactly how I liked my coffee. The way he glanced at me in meetings, as if gauging my thoughts before I even spoke. The way his voice softened when it was just the two of us, discussing ideas in the dim glow of office lights. Then came the crisis. A rival company had gotten too close to our work, dangerously close. Documents went missing. There were whispers that someone inside had leaked information. Jacob stormed into my office, his expression unreadable. "They're trying to take this from us," he said, his voice firm but calm. "Then we fight," I responded without hesitation. He studied me for a long moment before smirking. "That's what I like about you." And we did fight. We worked harder, smarter. We protected what was ours, and when the dust settled, we had won. When the project finally launched, it was an undeniable success. It gained industry-wide recognition, secured high-profile investors, and cemented both of us as serious players in the field. And then came the awards ceremony. The night was glamorous, the energy electric. We sat through speeches, accepted the award, posed for photos. But it wasn't until we were on that stage, standing side by side, that it happened. Without thinking, without hesitation, we hugged. It wasn't planned. It wasn't something either of us had thought about. One second, we were standing there, smiling, exhausted, but victorious. And the next, his arms were around me, strong and warm, pulling me close. I didn't pull away. I melted into him, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, the solid weight of him against me. And when we finally stepped back, I saw something in his eyes, something that made my breath hitch, something I wasn't ready to name. But I felt it. I knew he felt it too. The celebration carried on into the night. Champagne flowed, toasts were made, laughter filled the air. And yet, through it all, my focus kept drifting back to him. The way his gaze lingered on mine across the room. The way he leaned in when we spoke, as if drawn closer by some invisible force. And the worst part? I wanted him, more than I wanted to admit. Jacob was everything my ex wasn't, strong, steady, completely unshaken by pressure. He challenged me, pushed me, made me better, and I couldn't deny it anymore. I was falling for him, hard. The night of the awards ceremony lingered in my mind long after it ended. I kept replaying that hug, the warmth of his embrace, the way we had instinctively gravitated toward each other like two halves of something whole. I told myself it was just the moment, the adrenaline, the sheer relief of finally winning. But deep down, I knew better. Something had shifted. And no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, there was no going back. After the project's success, life didn't slow down. If anything, it only got busier. Jacob and I continued working together, taking on new ventures, growing our influence in the industry. It was exhilarating, challenging, exhausting, but also undeniably fulfilling. And through it all, we remained us. Partners, friends, something more, but something neither of us was ready to name. Until one evening changed everything. We had wrapped up a long day of negotiations, our final deal sealing yet another successful project. Instead of going our separate ways, Jacob suggested celebrating. "Nothing fancy," he had said with a smirk. "Just a drink, you and me." So we ended up at a rooftop lounge, quiet, intimate, far from the usual noise of the city. The view stretched out endlessly, the skyline shimmering against the dark sky. I leaned against the railing, inhaling the crisp night air. "We did it again," I murmured, watching the distant glow of car lights below. Jacob stood beside me, his hands resting casually in his pockets. "Of course we did," he said, his voice steady. "You and I? We don't lose." I smiled at that. For a while, we just stood there, sipping our drinks, lost in the moment. But then he shifted, turning toward me fully. "I have a confession." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" He exhaled slowly, as if weighing his words. "That night, the night you called me to apologize, I knew exactly who you were the second your name popped up on my screen." I let out a small laugh. "Yeah, you humiliated me with that, by the way." "You made it very easy," he teased, but then his expression softened. "But the thing is, I wasn't surprised you called. I was waiting for it." I blinked. "You were?" "Yeah." He set his glass down, leaning against the railing beside me. "Because even before that night, I knew you were special. And after everything that happened, I wasn't about to let you disappear from my life again." My heart pounded. He turned to fully face me, his blue eyes locked onto mine. "And now? I don't want to keep pretending like this is just business or friendship, because it's not. You know it. I know it." I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. "Jacob, no more excuses," he murmured. "No more holding back." And then, just like that, he closed the space between us. His lips met mine, soft yet insistent, a kiss that was as inevitable as the pull of gravity. I melted into him, every doubt, every hesitation disappearing the moment his arms wrapped around me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't chaotic. It was right, like something we had been moving toward all along. The next few months passed in a blur of excitement, passion, and us. No more unspoken words. No more dancing around the truth. We were together, finally, and it was effortless. Jacob wasn't just my partner in business anymore. He was my partner in everything. The man who made me laugh when I was stressed, who pushed me to be better, who stood by my side no matter what. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. I had lost something once, something I thought I could never recover. But now, standing beside Jacob, his fingers intertwined with mine as we watched another sunset from the balcony of our place, I knew one thing for certain. I hadn't lost anything at all. I had only just begun. And this? This was just the start of something extraordinary.